The Story of the Moon by J.P. O'Brien. Back when he was still a child, one of the best parts of young Keir's day was when his father would carry him up the stairs to his bedroom, put him in his pyjamas, tuck him into bed, and pull up the story chair. From that moment, the 4-year-old knew it was time for an adventure. He would allow himself to sit back with a smile pasted across his round face and sink into the comfort of his pillow, listening to his father's dulcet words until he fell fast asleep. His father, David, felt equally highly about that part of his day too. He was a writer, and although he undoubtedly saw the value of embedding in his young son an appreciation for the written word, he would sometimes elect to leave the books on the shelf and instead improvise for his son. This provided an opportunity for the two of them to get creative together, unrestricted by the static page. During these particular nights, David especially enjoyed when his son chimed in with questions, while he was still awake enough to participate, that is, thus playing his own part in crafting their story. The end result was a collaborative effort that came from two wild imaginations dancing around each other. This evening's story was to be about the moon, David had decided, after Keir had been asking his father why, on some nights, it was a full white circle in the black sky, and why on other nights, like tonight, it was nothing more than a thin sliver that he could barely see. "They do that so they can clean it," David said matter-of-factly, as he was helping feed his son's arms through the sleeves of his green pyjama top. "And so they pull a curtain over a part of it, bit by bit, to make sure that all of the cleaners with their brushes and mops and brooms and vacuum cleaners stay out of sight behind it. They want to keep everything looking neat and tidy, you see, for us down on Earth. Up there, they are obsessed with how tidy everything looks." The young boy hopped into bed, crumpling up the covers underneath his knees as he went. His father pulled them out from under him, then whipped them over Keir's lower half, fluffed up his pillow for him, and pulled over the story chair to take a seat himself. "The moon is so big," David went on, "that it only looks to us down here like it takes up a tiny part of the night sky. But really, when you get closer to it, you realise how enormous it actually is. So cleaning it is a big operation. They have a whole team of people dedicated just to the curtain alone. Each one of them is spaced apart, every 1.5 meters along the edge of it. When their supervisor says so, he counts down 3, 2, 1, and then heave! They all pull the curtain at once." As he spoke, David grabbed the long edge of Keir's bed cover with his clenched fists and mimed pulling it over the moon with all his might. The young boy giggled. "And then the part that they have just covered up with a huge curtain can be cleaned. Just out of sight, all of the cleaners move along and get to work on the new section that is now hidden from our view. In fact, do you know how big the moon is?" "No!" exploded Keir. "The moon is so big, it takes an entire month for them to get every nook and cranny clean. And by that point, the cleaners have done their jobs, and the curtain pullers can start to pull the curtain back from the other side and let us have a look at all their good work." "Why do they clean it?" Keir asked. "Well, they need to keep the moon clean," said David, "because down here on Earth, they are keeping track of that sort of thing. There is an organisation called NASA, a big team who looks after everything to do with space and the stars and, of course, the moon. And they give a score for how well the moon has been cleaned. You can't see it from where we live, unfortunately, but they hold up a giant scorecard out of 10, pointing it up towards the moon, telling everyone up there how well they did this month. By then, the curtain is pulled completely back and the cleaners have done such a good job scrubbing the surface that it shines brightly. It shines so brightly, in fact, that people down here on Earth have a shadow, even in the middle of the night. Isn't that something? The boy nodded, and his eyes glazed over with imagination. Then they all looked down, his father went on, to see the score that NASA is holding up for them this time. If they did it just right, it's a perfect 10. That's the best score you can get. I'd love for you to come and see the giant scorecard they hold up sometime. When you're a little older, I mean. Keir sat bolt upright. Can we go see it? Of course we can. We'll have to plan the trip properly, though. He frowned and tapped his pursed lips with a finger, as if in deep thought. They only hold it up once every month, of course, and I want you to be a little older so you can see it properly. Right now you're still a bit too small. Can you wait, do you think? Keir seemed mildly disappointed, but nodded anyway. Okay, good. Then the father continued. And that one night every month when we can see the whole thing, that's called a full moon. A full moon? Said the youngster. That's right, a full moon. They call it that because that's when all the cleaners and the curtain pullers take the night off. They all get together on the back of the moon and celebrate another good month of work, especially if they got marked a perfect 10. Anyone who goes to work that night is a fool. And then they start again? Asked Keir. That's right, his father smiled. But why does it get so dirty every month? Well, that party that they have on the night of the full moon, they make such a mess. They pop champagne bottles and fire off those little party streamers and share cake on paper plates so that everyone gets a piece. They have a party that lasts all night. In fact, if you listen very closely on the nights where there is a full moon, you can strain your ears just enough where you can hear their glasses clinking together in celebration. Whoa, said Keir. That's right, whoa. But they make such a mess while they're celebrating that after it's finished, they have to start from one side and get to cleaning again. Keir's eyes were wide with disbelief. So they have such a big party, he said, that they make such a mess they have to start cleaning again from the beginning. That's right. Where do they get the cake from? Keir asked, a hint of suspicion in his narrowed eyes. Oh, they have a whole team of bakers up there as well. Their one job is to make sure they have made enough cake for everyone who works on the moon for their huge party each month. That makes sense, Keir nodded. It does, his father smiled. What does the cake taste like? Asked the son. Well, now that I don't know, replied David, with a faraway look in his eye. I've never been lucky enough to try a slice, but I've heard a few rumours. Some people say that the cake is so dusty it would be horrible for us to eat. It would be like trying to eat the plaster from the wall, which just crumbles into dust as you bite into it. He knocked his knuckle against the wall behind Keir's bed as he spoke. Yuck! Exclaimed the boy. Why would they want to eat that? Well, hold on now, interrupted his father. There are the others that say that all of that is just a cover to stop us on Earth from wanting to fly up there and take all the cake for ourselves. And that it's not really dust at all, but very fine sugar. Just like the sugar we have in the kitchen, added Keir. That's right. The ones who say that believe that the cake is actually sweeter than anything you can imagine, that the people who keep the moon clean are really addicted to the sweetness of the sugary moon dust, and so they work all month long just so they can get their hard-earned slice of sweet cake that they have worked so hard for. In fact, they say that the vacuum cleaners they use to collect up all the sugary moon dust are emptied into sacks, which they then give to the bakers who get to work putting it into the cakes for the party. And only the most trustworthy cleaners on the whole team are allowed to operate the vacuum cleaners, because anyone else would just eat the sugar for themselves. The young boy appeared horrified that anyone would be so selfish as to cheat like that. I wouldn't do that, he exclaimed. straightening his back like a dignified young lord. "I know you wouldn't. You're a good boy." Keir softened back down into his pillow, his face flushed with pride. The two of them continued their shared story for a little while longer, until eventually Keir was so exhausted that his eyelids couldn't keep themselves open. His father gradually quietened his voice until he was silent, then made sure his son was comfortably tucked in before creeping towards the door. As he was about to close it behind him, he leaned back in. "Night-night, my lovely boy," he whispered. Keir's sleeping face had a gentle smile on it. Years later, once Keir had earned himself a degree in mathematics, a master's in engineering, and a PhD in aeronautics, then had subsequently accrued several years of experience as a military pilot and applied to NASA's human spaceflight program, before undergoing rigorous candidate training and additional lunar specialized training, he was eventually selected to participate as a lunar astronaut on the forthcoming research mission, much to the delight of his loving parents. With such a stellar education, he had long ago moved past the childish notions that the moon was dusty because of fine sugar, or that it is partially obscured several nights of the month by a giant curtain designed to hide the cleaners. But his relationship with his father had always remained playful and loving, due in no small part to those imaginative stories they shared while he was still a young boy, and he had always carried with him the particular story that they had created that night. So much so that when it came time for him to take his crew photo, he wanted to do something special in it for his father. In the photo, he is wearing his orange spacesuit with the helmet removed, against a white background proudly displaying the NASA logo. He wears a beaming smile across his strong jaw, and his short, blonde hair is combed immaculately to one side. In his hand, having obtained special permission from his superiors to bring a personal item into the photo, he holds a paper plate, upon which sits a small slice of cake. You have been listening to JP O'Brien Stories. For more, visit patreon.com/JP O'Brien Stories.